days and months can move. You are watching Lookuptv. This is the Morning Drift. Join us online at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms. I'm Kiage, Simba. Let's talk online. There's just so much that we're looking at this morning in as regards the state of politics in the country. Two things, or should I say, one thing that is essentially going on in the political scene in the country. It is the ongoing dialogue. The 10-member committee has already gone deep into those discussions, and indeed what we're seeing around those particular talks is the jitters and you would say talks around the talks, essentially outside it. Now what we do know is that the US has been quite closely involved in the talks between Raila Amolo Odinga and one president, Dr. William RUTO. What has also come out clear from those gentlemen is that talks about a power-sharing deal are not essentially on the table, but for majority of the negotiations or conversations we've also had here on Lookuptv, majority of analysts say that whatever way you would like to think about this, essentially when you look around, then this is another power deal that is essentially getting talked about in those negotiations. Because indeed, if the US is involved in it, then you gotta think that in some sort of way, the deal that is getting negotiated for right now appeals to both ends. For us, what we're going to do is sit right here, talk about it, really go deep into those conversations that are surrounding those particular talks at the Bomas of Kenya, and we do not know exactly how they're going to end. What we do know is that, well, we as the media are not part of those particular proceedings, and we're going to keep on receiving updates as those talks continue. If indeed the inaugural meeting on a Wednesday confirms anything. We take a tiny breather. Once we come back, I'll be taking you straight to your newspapers this morning. Let's jump right in then. This is according to the Standard this morning. This is what they're saying. US hand and RUTO Raila talks. This is according to this particular headline. What they're saying that Delaware Senator Chris Coons was been involved in Kenya's political situation and met opposition leader Raila Odinga, and is set to meet President Ruto today as United States seeks lasting stability of its key regional ally. This is according to the Standard this morning. Read that particular story on page 4, and this is according to the devolution conference that is essentially currently going on. There's a 10-year wait to hit revenue targets. At the onset of devolution, counties' financial sustainability was a deal, but 10 years later, counties still depend on national government to fund their budgets, with none meeting its own source revenue targets. Now some are hiking taxes despite tough economic times. That particular story has also been covered in the Standard this morning. So grab yourself a copy and jump right in and see how majority of counties do not know where to get their monies from. They're still depending on the national government for their revenue, as the revenue that is running the county budget. On page 16, there's a good story here about how doctors now have been able to refix a man's hand that was cut in a domestic row. Right? A team of doctors at Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in Wasangishu have re-implanted a hand chopped off during a family fight in an 11-hour operation. Oof, as long. All right, particular story has been covered on page 16. Now, 40 students get Finland visas as education fund scandal rages. That particular story has been covered on page 5, and we've really covered it heavily right here on our website, also on www.lookuptv.co.ke, also heavily on our social media platforms, and Lookuptv across all of them. Now, on the back page. This is one. The story is big because this national school games rekindle hope in neglected sector. There have been flashes of, talent in the ongoing school games, especially in football. Major talent was on showcase this weekend, especially from Agorosare, heavy, all right? And if you didn't watch that, then you also gotta go back and watch it. Now, it's heavy talent. Even on the back page, there's a story on how Liverpool failed to break Chelsea, but the story is got to be changed, saying that Chelsea seem to have re-emerged again to be, to look like the Premier League club they were a couple of seasons ago. It's not about Liverpool, it's more about Chelsea as well. It's a story of two tales. But it will make sense because Liverpool is missing on Caicedo. Caicedo looks as if he's going to go to Chelsea. Same thing to Lavia as well. Maybe that will be the reason as why this particular headline would read like this. Good. All right, let's cross over to the Daily Nation this morning. The headline is quite different. Business of war. This is what they're saying. After more than a decade of Kenya Defence Forces involvement in Somalia, a total of 52 billion shillings has been spent on procuring weapons, combat equipment, and equipping troops. But has the military intervention achieved its goals? That particular story covered on pages 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Big. 4,660 Kenya formally deployed troops to Somalia. Look at where we are, 1,000 recently deployed in the first 6 months of this year, and you'll see exactly how much money EU grant to KDF for Al-Shabaab fight. It keeps on increasing year on year from 2012 to 2022. We are at 6.58 billion in terms of the grants that came in to KDF from EU. There's a lot of money that goes into this, isn't it? That particular story again covered on pages 2, 3, 4, and 5. On page 6, and I've already seen this particular story on our website this morning. Kithure Kindiki is now warning Raila on a protest. A particular story has been covered on page 6. Now, Interior CS Kithure Kindiki warned Azimio La Umoja leader Raila Odinga against threatening to resume protests if the planned talks Bomas of Kenya do not go their way. He urged the opposition to allow dialogue to continue peacefully and to accept the outcome. What outcome? Page 6. We're going to talk about that this morning. All right. On page 7, read the story of how there is now a new NSSF Act on how new law unlocks 48 billion shillings for the fund. This morning, let's see exactly what it is they're talking about. Sport, not so much in terms of the ongoing Premier League, the English Premier League. You do know what the results are this weekend with all the way from Arsenal, Man City is the one that opened the competition on Friday. Big teams that have played this weekend, Tottenham, all the way to Liverpool and Chelsea, which was a blockbuster battle yesterday. If you did watch it, then you can check on the results. On the school games, winners from Term 1 and Term 2 games should focus to East African Secondary School Championship. That particular story has been covered on our page 35 of the Daily Nation. Now, you do know exactly what is in your newspapers this morning. Once you wake up, then you will know which one to grab this morning. And like I said, majority of these stories have also been covered extensively on our website on www.lookuptv.co.ke. We take a tiny breather. Once we come back, I'll be taking you straight to the newsroom this morning. Well, I've got to share with you some of the biggest stories that you are also waking up to. Welcome back. Senior Kilifi County government officials are calling upon area youth to form companies and self-help groups in order to benefit from county government tenders and the newly created Wezesha Fund. Speaking at Gede Primary School in Kilifi North constituency during the celebrations to mark this year's International Youth Day, the officials led by Kilifi Deputy Governor Flora Chibule said the county government was committed to empowering the youth financially, but asked them to be organized to qualify for the support. Adasa Christel opens the bulletin this morning.
Speaking at Gede Primary School in Kilifi North constituency, Kilifi Deputy Governor Flora Chibule said that only registered companies and youth groups will be able to access the Wezesha Fund loans and the 30% of government tenders set aside for women, the youth and persons with disabilities. Chibule added that the county government has partnered with local financial institutions to avail 1 billion shillings in cheap loans to registered groups and cooperative societies to boost their businesses, and called on the youth to take advantage of the initiative in order to attain financial independence.
Ndo tukawekeza ndani ya manifesto ya Gideon Maitha Mungaro, ndio leo hii tunajivunia ya kwamba tuna fund ambayo itatuwezesha sisi wote. Tumesema vijana, kina mama, watu wanaoishi na ulemavu, wote wako katika dimbo hilo ili uweze kunufaika katika pesa hizo, ambazo katika hii financial budget kuna 1 billion out for grabs. Jieleze ni biashara gani hiyo ambayo wewe wataka kuiendeleza.
Na pia sasa hivi kuna Wezesha Fund ambayo inapatia nafasi vijana na pia kina mama na pia watu wenye matatizo mbalimbali, kwa mfano wale watiifu, wajane, watu ambao wametoka kwenye jamii za chini, minority community, waweze kutumia nafasi hiyo through Wezesha loan kujiendeleza kibiashara na pia kimasomo.
The Director of Sustainable Business and Social Impact at Safaricom noted that the organization has engaged the youth in various activities and has initiated a project that focuses on partnering with the youth who are doing things within the green space.
We have started a new project at Safaricom Foundation that now focuses on partnering with the youth who are doing things within the green space. So we call it ecopreneurship and agripreneurship. So we are looking at the youth in this space. What are you doing and how can we help you so long as you want to grow the ecopreneur side.
Adasa Christel, Lookuptv.
Moving on now, in a bizarre incident, a woman is reported to have killed her husband and chopped off his manhood in Bungoma County. According to close family members and neighbors, the two have been having domestic issues in the past few months. Both of the body deceased was found in his house, covered with an iron shed.
Asante.
Tukaanza kumuuliza, na sasa kwa nini unabeba mahindi? Na yeye alisema mahindi ikae huko chini. Akasema yeye ajui, lakini alisema tu abebe mahindi. Ndio wakamshika. Akasema sasa apelekwe kwa polisi kama bado tunatafuta ango. Tukaenda naye mpaka huko, tukamweka kwa polisi, tulikuwa tumeacha huko watu wanamtafuta. Tukapigiwa simu, ango amepatikana. Wamemfunika mabati kwa room yake. Tupoza huyo askari wakamchukua wakamweka ndani. Tukakuja kuconfirm kweli ango ameaga. Wamekuwa na mgogoro. Last year alimwekea sumu kwa chakula. Tukafanya hiyo kesi, akasema hatairudia. Sasa ni mgogoro ambao umefutana kitu kama mwaka mbili hivi.
Moving on, residents from 5 villages in Ambiri Ward, Kiharu constituency are calling on the government to move with speed and tighten security in order to save them from one-man gang that has been terrorizing the region by attacking and stealing from them. As Werimu Wasike now reports, the suspected burglar known as Wagadhanoa, the X-man, breaks into his victims' homes, threatening them with an axe, knives and a bottle of petrol, and drops them off their money and mobile phones.
During the day, tranquility engulfs Kiharu constituency, but when darkness clouds in, fear and anxiety strikes the residents of Kiharu, denying them a shred of peace. The 5 villages under attack by a suspected burglar known as Wagadhanwa, the axeman explained their horrific ordeal to the media. One of the victims being Anthony Wambugu, who explains how the suspected armed burglar robbed him off of his money and mobile phone by threatening him with an axe.
After ile dirisha alipiga tu chuma tatu, akaweza kuingilia kwa hiyo space, akaingia akachukua simu na akachukua pesa. Na pia mimi hapo ndio akiniambia nitoe pesa yenye nilikuwa nimeweka kwa gari, akaniambia tutoke nje, nikitoka ndio alinipiga na shoka na mimi nikaweza kupotea. Mwizi alikuwa mtu mkubwa, ako na nguvu, ametengeneza mwili vizuri. Alikuwa na kisu, alikuwa na shoka na alikuwa pia na chupa alikuwa ameweka petrol.
Mercy Muthoni wears fear on her face as she narrates of the traumatizing ordeal when the axeman broke into their home and poured petrol on her, threatening to burn her if she didn't give her the money she had hidden in her house.
Naomba serikali tu itusaidie kwa sababu wakati aliingia ilikuwa shida sana. Akaitisha pesa, simu tukampea. Immediately wakati aliona nimempea pesa, alitoka tu. Ilikuwa over 50k.
Victims Mwangi Kamau and Dennis Minor are calling on the government to tighten security and ensure that the suspected armed burglar faces the law and is apprehended by the authorities for peace to be maintained in the region.
Tuliingia wakati mmoja, akanifuata pale nilikuwa nimeketi, akakuja akanigoga na shoka ya kichwa. Kutoka hapo nikasikia nimekosa nguvu, nikasikia kizuguzugu pale nilikuwa nimeketi. Akakuwa amepewa pesa kwa sababu walipoona nimegogwa.
Werimo Wasike, Lookuptv.
President William Ruto now says the over-reliance on borrowing has been brought about by lack of proper saving structures in the country. The head of state, while lamenting at the lack of savings from millions of Kenyans, has vowed to ensure the doubling of the amount of money saved under NSSF from the current 350 billion to 700 billion by the end of his first term.
With opposition leaders calling out the government over its decision to rely on taxes to fund projects, President William Ruto has reiterated his stance on borrowing, insisting that his administration will continue to champion for savings, noting at his plans to double the amount of savings in the next 4 years.
We were not in good space in terms of building our savings. In fact, they told me, which is true, our savings as a percentage of GDP is below 10%. Savings in other jurisdictions is 25, 30, 40. In fact, in China, it is 55% of GDP. So they told me we have to change this because part of the challenge we have of borrowing is because we do not have savings. That the money we saved in NSSF, and Raymond would know, is about 350 billion shillings in the last 60 years. We are going to double that money, the 350 billion. We are going to double that money in 4 short years.
Speaking at Faith Evangelistic Ministries in Karen, Nairobi, the head of state continued to advocate for the affordable housing project, noting that the main aim of the project was to create employment for the youth.
Many people were wondering. I have many questions. Why are you pushing this housing agenda? What is these houses? Who told you we need a house? We all have houses. What is this? Good people, I have said it before, I will say it again in church. It wasn't so much about the houses. It was so much about the jobs for the young people of Kenya. We have never had a comprehensive program, deliberate, intentional, to create opportunities for the young people of Kenya to have a job, to have an income.
Elsewhere, while attending the 41st graduation ceremony at Baraton University in Nandi County, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has continued to defend the new university funding model, insisting that it is meant to ensure equality among all students.
Nimeona sasa wakijaribu kusema ati the changes we have made in the education sector is making education for the rich. It's a lie, blatant lie. What we are saying is we are changing the model so that people, once you are given assistance, is full. Hakuna haja kusomesha mtoto umpatie bursary form 1, umwachilie form 2, hana then arudi nyumbani umeenda hasara. We have just refocused and changed the strategy of funding university education because there were many challenges.
Ian Keitani, Lookuptv.
Let's move on then. Interior CS. Professor Kithure Kindiki has given a warning to the Azimio coalition over a possible return to the streets if the dialogue between the two political formations will not materialize. Kithure Kindiki further stated that the law enforcers are going to protect private and public property, noting that no politician will be allowed to instill fear to innocent people just because they want to achieve political objectives. Roga Ival with the details.
The Cabinet Secretary for Interior Security, Professor Kithure Kindiki, has stressed that the opposition wing should be willing to accept the outcome of the negotiations that will be held as from tomorrow between them and the government. Professor Kindiki has said that the violent demonstrations have been prohibited in case the Azimio coalition will not be satisfied.
We must remove violence from the equation of the politics of our country. Na hiyo iende kila mahali. Wakati watu wanapanga siasa yao, wakuwe wabunge, wakuwe MCA, wakuwe governor, wakuwe senator, wakuwe rais, mtu apange kuuza sera na asiporidhika na matokeo afuate sheria na afuate taasisi utaratibu ambao uko katika katiba wa kulalamika.
Kindiki has complained how Kenyans are instilled with fear during protesting days where lives and property are lost.
The government has decided that it will not allow again the destruction of the property of the people of Kenya. It will not allow citizens, whatever their grievances, to stone policemen who are on duty, to ban police vehicles, and to attack government facilities.
The CS defended the leadership system of President William RUTO, comparing it with that of the late Mwai Kibaki, raising the concept of Kenya being independent for its own expenditure, as he championed the need to reduce loans from abroad.
Mimi niko na hakika ya kwamba katika utawala huu wa Mheshimiwa William RUTO na msaidizi wake Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua, nchi yetu itapata kupata rasilimali za kutosha za kuendesha nchi yetu, na mambo ya kukopa madeni mengi ambayo yataumiza vizazi vijavyo, hiyo mambo itasimama.
Additionally, Professor Kithure Kindiki is afraid of drugs addiction increase among young people from the Mount Kenya region, saying that this is going to affect the exponential growth of the incoming generations. However, he has now issued a directive of licenses crackdown of alcohol businesses in the Mount Kenya region.
Government will review all licenses in Kenya of second generation brewers. Zote. We are going to review all of them afresh.
Roga Ival, Lookuptv.
Roga Ival. Now, the Prime Cabinet Secretary has issued a call to the opposition, urging them to denounce violence, especially as discussions are poised to commence. Mudavadi emphasized that the concerns advocated by the Kenya Kwanza faction take precedence given their comprehensive deliberation. Now, those remarks were delivered by Mudavadi during his attendance at a church event in Kajiado. His statements come at a time when Azimio leader Raila Amolo Odinga engaged in a meeting with the US Senator Chris Coons.
Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has continued to stress that the country is not in a crisis and it is prudent for Kenya to get solutions to her own problems without involving foreigners.
Tulisema Kenya is not in a crisis. Kwa hivyo ni vizuri tuelewane na tusaidiane kwamba these are issues that we can solve locally.
Mudavadi, who was speaking as he attended a church function in Kajiado, maintained that the Kenya Kwanza side has only 5 issues that need to be addressed, which include restructuring of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, CDF embedment in the Constitution, and the issue of the 2/3 gender rule. And
agenda item number 4, the President himself had already sent a petition to the Speaker of the National Assembly to say that he would like that there be a formal office of the official opposition so that it is integrated properly into law. And the 5th item, now they want to discuss the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Those are the 5 items that were raised and that constitute the agenda before this conversation, the teams that are going to converse. Kwa hivyo, sisi tunasema tuko tayari, we will negotiate on these items in good faith, but we want to make it clear that the government that has got the mandate of the people of Kenya is the government of William Samoei Ruto, and he's the president, and he should be allowed to do what he has to do.
The cost of living being top of Azimio la Umoja agenda, Mudavadi says it is not a policy that the government will touch on, as it already has plans on the same in their manifesto.
Kwa hivyo watu wasituletee kwamba tuliwashinda lakini wanataka tuwatekelezee polisi zao. Pana, wangoje 2027 mchezo ikiwa hapo kwa uwanja, wakishinda waendelee. Lakini tukae kama Wakenya. That is the message we want to push across, and we assure you that we are okay.
Mudavadi also called for the opposition to denounce violence during the talks and allow the Kenya Kwanza government to serve Kenyans.
We must all denounce violence. Sisi wote tukatae katakata kwamba hatutaki fujo kwa siasa yetu, kwa taifa letu. That is what it should be. Na hata wakati ndugu zetu wanaongea kutoka kwa upande wa Azimio na kutoka kwa upande wa Kenya Kwanza, we expect them that as one of the very clear resolutions that must come out of those talks is absolute denunciation of violence by any party in order to resolve political issues.
This comes as ODM leader Raila Odinga on Sunday held talks with U.S. Senator for Delaware Chris Coons. Coons is credited for the handshake deal between former President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila in 2018. The meeting with Raila comes a day before the official commencement of the bipartisan talks on Monday. Azimio la Umoja and Kenya Kwanza have appointed 5 members each to the bipartisan talks team. Both teams have already appointed 4 members each to the technical committee that will draft a roadmap for the talks. Brian Amuai, Lookuptv.
Now, the clergy from Seventh-day Adventist are now calling on the leaders from both Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja coalitions to avoid chest thumping and issuing polarizing statements ahead of the planned bipartisan talks between the two sides. Now, the religious leaders indicated that the government should agree to the talks in good faith, while noting that engaging in talks with the opposition is not a sign of weakness on the government side, but rather a show of strength and leadership.
While negotiation between the government and opposition coalition Azimio la Umoja expected to officially kick off on Monday, with both sides yet to agree fully on the issues of concern.
We have held a very successful meeting this morning, and as indicated, we have agreed that we will begin the dialogue process once we frame the agenda items, and I think we should be ready with that by Monday.
As both sides settle for the talks, priests from Sabbath Church Nakuru West Parish have called on the two parties to resolve their issues amicably. Speaking to the media in Nakuru, Pastor Zachary Amenya noting the importance of both sides speaking in one voice.
My advice to the government, together with all the politicians, is that let this team that has been chosen to handle the issue, let that team be left to be independent, because in this country we need peace.
In addition, the clergy noted that leaders must show willingness to listen to the needs of Kenyans
and both the government and opposition wing should work together to provide a permanent solution to the problems affecting millions of Kenyans.
Let's allow the bipartisan team to do its work. Let us not have politicians agree on something and then while outside there, they continue to add more wood into the fire.
The clerics also called on politicians to find alternative ways to resolve political disputes that will not hold the country hostage or lead to violence and destruction of property.
Kiingisha siasa katika mambo hayo ni kukosanisha. Sasa kwa sababu wanakuja kama makabila, ukiangalia kama hapa kanisani tuko makabila yote. Wakileta mambo kama hayo, hatutaendelea, tunarudisha nchi yetu nyuma.
Nushin Mungasia, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
There's a question, and it's quite clear, isn't it? That particular story right there introduces our discussion this morning. Because if you listen to Musalia Mudavadi speaking this weekend, it's been clear. And we're going to look at the issues that Musalia Mudavadi has said that the committee that is meeting today with Olusegun Obasanjo is going to talk about. It's listed 3 issues only. So Kimani Ichung'wah's statement on what issues I'm going to talk about become irrelevant, and that's not a statement, it's a question. That particular statement from Azimio, La Umoja, on the issues I'm going to talk about, does it become irrelevant? That particular statement that we listened to Kalonzo Musyoka last week Wednesday when they had the inaugural talks and the so-called handshake with Kimani Ichung'wah, does it become irrelevant? Because now the church is telling them, stop talking outside the talks. Once we come back, then we'll be looking at this particular story and much more that has happened this weekend as we officially today then begin those talks. I do see Fanya Mambo in the studio with me this morning, and I'm telling you it's going to be 1 hour and 30 minutes of breaking down those particular issues for you, so that then you're also in the know this morning. Good morning.
Realize your home ownership dream by investing in Brookvale Tuala by Safaricom Investment Cooperative, a magnificent prime residential property located in Ongata Rongai. Brookvale Tuala overlooks the majestic Ngong Hills and lies only 17 kilometers from Nairobi CBD. The project boasts of well-serviced plots with a perimeter wall, graded roads and a borehole. 50 by 100 plots are going for 1.4 million shillings with a flexible payment plan of up to 6 months. To book your plot, call 0729 121212 today. Safaricom Investment Cooperative, the investment partner of choice.
Hapa panajulikana kama Napetao. Hapa tumekuja na zaidi ya chakula 500 ili kuhakikisha wakazi hapa angalau wanapokea kitu cha kutia mdomoni. Unavyoangalia hali ya anga sehemu hii, jamani, kuna ukame. Wakati wowote ambapo wewe unacheza loto, 25% ya pesa ambazo unatumia unakuja kufanikisha shughuli kama hii.
Thank you for your help. Together we are changing lives.
So the story we're telling today is a story of passion in practice that grows into business.
We have partnered with the Youth Fund, talk to as many youth as possible and work with them, hold their hand.
It is an expose of captains who have decided to take on challenges in different sectors and industries within the country.
My mentors had also not started as CEOs. They grew up and they showed me how they grew in the organizations. So that's what motivated me to actually do international business. And it was a good experience.
As an individual, support in bridging that care gap, part of me also to offer a solution. I want to leave this world a better place than I found it.
This is the Captain's Arena. My name is Simba Kiage.
It's time to restart, rescale and talk about health matters.
If you get exposed to high fluoride between 0 to 12 years, your teeth will be permanently discolored.
Wake up, eat healthy and keep fit. With the help of health experts, we will help you understand different health conditions and how to treat them.
Dental fluorosis is an irreversible condition that affects the outer layer of your tooth.
This is your health journal. My name is Wanjugu Washira.
Every Wednesday from 8:30 p.m.
Everything will be well discussed here on this platform.
Only on Lookuptv.
Hi, and welcome to Tujenge Home. Your #1 show when it comes to all things architecture, real estate, property development, interior design. You get it right here on Tujenge Home. When the food is ready.
You want to serve them?
Dinner is served. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go. Let's get it.
Praise the Lord and Bwana Yesu asifiwe sana. My name is Pastor Josiah. I'm from a ministry called Reconcilers World. God gives strength to the weary. I am, Jesus is speaking. He says, I am the door. Then he says, anyone who enters in through me will be saved. The Lord is my shepherd or shepherd. Then he says, I will always have everything I need. God desires to guide you. He's telling you that this day, don't just trust the Lord, but he's telling you, trust the Lord widely.
As the night falls, we come to life to bring you a comprehensive broadcast from the numerous events happening across our 47 counties.
When it breaks, it matters, and each story is important.
If it's Thursday, join me, Nancy Lelima, and my able panelists as we break down the law jargons and analyze the Constitution in a way only you can understand.
The news cycle never stops, neither does time. We cover each and every sector and present to you factual and accurate occurrences. This is where facts win the day. Join me,
Nancy Lelima,
Ian Keitani, Tuesday, every Wednesday,
Thursday,
as from 9 p.m. on The Insight, only on Lookuptv.
Beautiful, wonderful, glorious. We are having the show that we share entitled Shepherd Voice.
I'm waiting for you to get me to Kenya. That's what I'm waiting
for you.
God is the source of every blessings that flow into your life.
And I know that God is going to bless you and to do a new thing.
Pray.
So the story we're telling today is a story of passion in practice that grows into business.
We have partnered with the Youth Fund, talk to as many youth as possible and work with them, hold their hand.
It is an expose of captains who have decided to take on challenges in different sectors and industries within the country.
My mentors had also not started as CEOs. They grew up and they showed me how they grew in the organizations. So that's what motivated me to actually do international business. And it was a good experience.
As an individual, support in bridging the care gap, part of me also to offer a solution. I want to leave this world a better place than I found it.
This is the Captain's Arena. My name is Simba Kiage.
Changamoto zetu ni mingi sana. Wewe unaona hata hii jua yetu vile ni kali. Unaona vile maji ni shida. Saa hii water tables zimeenda chini. Mifugo yetu tumepoteza kwa sababu ya hii ukame.
Hii ni dhihirisho tosha kwamba hamna maji. Hapajanyesha zaidi ya mwaka mzima. Na sisi kama RUTO Foundation tumekuja tu kupunguza makali. Tumeleta maji zaidi ya lita 100,000. Tumeleta chakula zaidi ya nyumba 1100 watakuwa wanapokea kitu cha kutia mdomoni.
Nitaenda kukula leo. Nishibe. Nimwambie Mungu asante kwa sababu wamefikisha nyinyi hapa hivi.
Every time you play Lotto, 25% goes to the RUTO Foundation, which supports our fellow Kenyans through various causes. Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
This is it. Call it what you like. You might want to say the second round of negotiations. Or you might want to say bipartisan talks. Whatever you pick, it is up to you. But what we do know is that today then, after the inaugural meeting, last Wednesday, today, the 10-member team from the Kenya Kwanza side and the Azimio coalition are officially meeting for those talks. Between them, Olusegun Obasanjo, former president Nigeria. But then the talks around that looks as if there's another man who was also involved in other talks in this country that led Kenya into a power-sharing deal. His name, if you do remember, Chris Coons. Well, that opens the discussion for this morning. But then let's start like this then, because indeed the Prime Cabinet Secretary has issued a call to the opposition, urging them to denounce violence, especially as discussions are poised to commence. Mudavadi emphasized that the concerns advocated by the Kenya Kwanza faction take precedence given their comprehensive deliberation. Those remarks were delivered by Mudavadi during his attendance at a church event in Kajiado. His statements come at a time when Azimio leader Raila Odinga engaged in a meeting with the US Senator Chris Coons. Let's take a look at that story, come back and talk about it, because then it opens us to a sea of deliberations this morning.
Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has continued to stress that the country is not in a crisis and it is prudent for Kenya to get solutions to her own problems without involving foreigners.
Tulisema Kenya is not in a crisis. Kwa hivyo ni vizuri tuelewane na tusaidiane kwamba these are issues that we can solve locally.
Mudavadi, who was speaking as he attended a church function in Kajiado, maintained that the Kenya Kwanza side has only 5 issues that need to be addressed, which include restructuring of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, CDF embedment in the Constitution, and the issue of the 2/3 gender rule. And
agenda item number 4, the President himself had already sent a petition to the Speaker of the National Assembly to say that he would like that there be a formal office of the official opposition so that it is integrated properly into law. And the 5th item, now they want to discuss the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Those are the 5 items that were raised and that constitute the agenda before this conversation, the teams that are going to converse. Kwa hivyo, sisi tunasema tuko tayari, we will negotiate on these items in good faith, but we want to make it clear that the government that has got the mandate of the people of Kenya is the government of William Samoei Ruto, and he's the president, and he should be allowed to do what he has to do.
The cost of living being top of Azimio la Umoja agenda, Mudavadi says it is not a policy that the government will touch on, as it already has plans on the same in their manifesto.
Kwa hivyo watu wasituletee kwamba tuliwashinda lakini wanataka tuwatekelezee polisi zao. Pana wangoje 2027 mchezo ikiwa hapo kwa uwanja, wakishinda waendelee. Lakini tukae kama Wakenya. That is the message we want to push across, and we assure you that we are okay.
Mudavadi also called for the opposition to denounce violence during the talks and allow the Kenya Kwanza government to serve Kenyans.
We must all denounce violence. Sisi wote tukatae katakata kwamba hatutaki fujo kwa siasa yetu, kwa taifa letu. That is what it should be. Na hata wakati ndugu zetu wanaongea kutoka kwa upande wa Azimio na kutoka kwa upande wa Kenya Kwanza, we expect them that as one of the very clear resolutions that must come out of those talks is absolute denunciation of violence by any party in order to resolve political issues.
This comes as ODM leader Raila Odinga on Sunday held talks with U.S. Senator for Delaware Chris Coons. Coons is credited for the handshake deal between former President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila in 2018. The meeting with Raila comes a day before the official commencement of the bipartisan talks on Monday. Azimio la Umoja and Kenya Kwanza have appointed 5 members each to the bipartisan talks team. Both teams have already appointed 4 members each to the technical committee that will draft a roadmap for the talks. Brian Amuai, Lookuptv.
Well, that's it. Say, Musalia Mudavadi has already made it clear that on the issues that are worth discussing. That's what he's saying. It feels like the rest of the other issues that the Azimio coalition is bringing on the table are not worth it. And this is it. If I go back to that particular statement that Brian Amuai actually put in that story, he said that the concerns advocated by the Kenya Kwanza faction tech presidents in those negotiations. At this point, let me introduce the conversation. Fanya Mambo, how are you doing, sir?
Very good morning. Very good Monday morning.
Let me just put this outside there for any other person who's listening. Musalia Mudavadi feels that only the issues that have been fronted by the Kenya Kwanza government are the issues that are worth talking about. Fanya Mambo, that changes everything. It validates then the statement that the Azimio coalition gave after that purported statement by Kimani Ichung'wah. Kimani Ichung'wah went right ahead and listed issues that were worth discussing, saying, we agreed on these particular issues. The Azimio coalition came back and said, we didn't agree on those. You went right ahead, released a statement before we could give you our issues. Now Musalia Mudavadi is making it clear that indeed the Kenya Kwanza issues are the ones that should take precedence on that negotiation table. Meaning the Azimio coalition were right when they came back and told us, you see, these issues that Kimani Ichung'wah is saying we agreed upon, we didn't agree. We wanted to add our issues, and they went right ahead and listed their issues. First question, is Musalia Mudavadi validating the statement that we saw from the Azimio coalition ahead of these talks? And number two, it's now clear that the Kenya Kwanza issues are real issues that they want to talk to with the opposition government.
Thank you. Number one, I would like to say I am very mean with giving people praises.
Yes.
But I must commend one Musalia Mudavadi. He is the only Kenya Kwanza politician who appears to speak without dividing the nation. He calculates his words, and even when he says something that is a grand position, he says it without necessarily appearing to be dividing the nation. I have never praised a politician from the other end of the divide, but I think Musalia Mudavadi must be commended for speaking in a manner that kind of tells Kenyans, like, you know, when he condemns violence and says, let us denounce violence from all sides of the divide. Because the police were meeting violence on Kenyans, and the demonstrators to some extent also did meet violence on some of supermarkets and so on and so forth. So when he comes out and says things that are very unifying for this nation, you must commend him and even wonder thoroughly why he's not the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya or even the President of the Republic of Kenya. I think we have a problem when we are making choices in elections. But God bless our souls and give us the wisdom to make the right decisions moving forward. Having said that, I would like to say this. These talks are desperately needed by both parties. And I say desperately needed by both parties. Musalia Mudavadi is holding an imaginary position that he thinks is supposed to be somewhere between the Constitution and maybe the Police Act and the Riot Act. It is nowhere within our laws. So it is just an amorphous position that hangs in the air, and he's really looking forward. And that's why even as he speaks, he tries to find a way to insert the issue of his position being validated and being discussed and being made constitutional. Because his prime cabinet what? Of where, of which, prepared by who, under which constitution, supported by what law, prime cabinet what. So he has to find a way for that to be there. They also feel they need a leader of official opposition because they are feeling they need to cede ground. They don't want to see maandamano. By the way, they are not happy to see this maandamano. They know it affects business. They know it affects lives. They know their policemen have been shooting people. And by the way, I've had some politicians say that if Raila Amolo Odinga wants to do maandamano, he must send his children to the maandamano. But they are forgetting also that the police are also human beings. So if they are the same people who want to send people to quell maandamano, they might as well dress their children in police uniform and send them to go and quell maandamano, so that we have children of politicians, some on the maandamano side and children of the politicians on the other side wearing police uniform and butchering one another. Then they will understand what the ordinary Kenyans are going through when they bury their loved ones, when they go to hospital to visit a person who's been injured either as a policeman or as a demonstrator. So now they have come and said, these are our positions. I keep saying that I chose a very unpopular line of law that is becoming popular with the day: mediation and arbitration, trying to resolve disputes out of court. And my experience from mediation is that then there would be no talks if there were no hardline positions. What's the use? The only reason you go into mediation is because these parties do not agree. Musalia Mudavadi has a list of what he thinks is important, and the Raila Amolo Odinga side has got a list of what they think is important. That is where negotiations begin. And they begin by saying, okay, what do you want? And what do you want? And then you list those things that you feel they agree on.
Yes.
and list those things that you feel you do not agree on. I think my budget for civic education on mediation is being exhausted and depleted but I would like to share this.
Yeah.
So once you do that, then you are able to list those issues that you feel they agree on and agree on them first. Don't go to the hard one first. So that whether or not there's a final agreement, you have what you call a partial settlement agreement. That on those things that they agree on, these ones we are not fighting, can we write a partial settlement agreement saying that before we even begin these talks, the parties have agreed on these issues and they are happy, and we gazette those ones, and Kenya moves forward. Now we are left with the 2 or 3 that are very difficult. And from these 2 or 3 that are very difficult, we begin with the easiest and finish with the hardest. That way you're able to achieve 50, 60, 70% of what you wanted. And if God willing they agree on everything, then you have 100%. So I'm hoping that wisdom will guide them. I was struggling and fighting and lobbying to be part of the technical committee.
Yes.
I pray that they consider having me on that technical committee, because in mediation, then you have the experience and the latitude to be able to guide this process in a professional way.
Yes.
Because politicians are the same people who will say this and then in the afternoon say something different. So it needs some injection of some professionalism in how they go about those issues. But I can tell you there's nothing wrong with politicians coming and saying this is what we want, because negotiations must begin from the point of having 2 people who do not agree.
Here's what is wrong for any other person who's listening to it. This is the second round of these negotiations. What we saw in the first round is people who took hardline positions to the point that you couldn't tell them what, to the point that they completely failed. Now, if you listen keenly to the words of Musalia Mudavadi, he's even discredited the need to have Olusegun Obasanjo in that particular committee. This is what he said: we do not need foreigners to tell us exactly what is right for our country. But this is what the president said. The president said, you can't mediate when you're part of this particular conflict. This hardline position that we keep on seeing from the Kenya Kwanza side and the Azimio coalition, Fanyamambo, when is somebody going to tell them, shut up? Because then we've agreed from the Kenya Kwanza side, bring your members. The Azimio side have brought their members on the table. We agreed we need a mediator. The mediator is already here. So why all of a sudden then do we have people that are talking about talks when the people who are going to talk about these talks have already been selected? What is Musalia doing?
I'd like you to understand one thing. There is the talks themselves.
That's it.
And then there's the politics behind the talks.
Is it needed now?
You see what you saw, for example, happening in Mount Kenya, politicians going around and telling Mount Kenya there will be no handshake. Well, that was a smoke screen. You have to manage the politics that surround the talks. Because for a long time, the people of Mount Kenya, where I come from, right now, ashamedly so, are so bent on believing that Raila Amolo Odinga was their problem from the beginning, since independence until now. And so you have to go and manage them and tell them that Raila Amolo Odinga is not coming into government, for them to feel as though they made the right decision by not voting for him and voting on this other side. And so you need to decipher as a wise person when people are being leaders and when people are being politicians. When you see Musalia Mudavadi and the others behind cameras in churches and in places where they got a lot of votes like Kajiado, what those people are doing is they are being politicians. But when you come to the Bomas talks, now that is leadership. You remove the heart of a politician and wear the heart of a leader and start talking about what is good for Kenya. And Kenya is everybody who voted for Kenya Kwanza and everybody who did not vote for Kenya Kwanza and everybody who stayed at home and abstained from those elections. That is Kenya. So leadership is provided when you go for those talks. But politics has to continue to be played because people have, once you know how people think. Like, for example, people in Mount Kenya for a long time have believed that they shouldn't vote for Raila Amolo Odinga. I do not know why. And so there was this feeling that if they come into talks and have a conversation, they could lose their support within Mount Kenya. And that's why you saw them going only within Mount Kenya to say that there will be no handshake. Why was that conversation not told to the people of Mount Elgon or Eldoret or Sugoi. Why didn't you see the president going to Eldoret to tell the people of Eldoret, we are not going to have a handshake, and those are the people who voted for him? It's because he knows the people of Eldoret have voted for Raila before, and they would vote for Raila if there was an opportunity to vote for him. But Mount Kenya is a different script. And that's why they have to keep going there and telling those people, your problem is not bursary, your problem is not population, your problem is Raila Amolo Odinga. It's the only way for them to retain their relevance in politics. And so, there is the politics behind the talks, and there is the leadership behind the talks. And what we are asking our leaders is, once you get to Bomas, the minute you drive into that gate, remove your political hat, and now wear a leadership hat, and walk into those talks as a leader who knows that every part of this country is important. There's a Luya in Mombasa, there's a Luya in Kisumu, there's a Kikuyu in every other part of this country, there's a Kamba in every other part of this country. So if you have an area you want to ban, go and ban the ocean, then let's see how strong you are. So let us try as much as possible to go into the Bomas talks as leaders, not as politicians.
Yes. When Musalia speaks, who does he speak for, Fanyamambo?
To start with, as I said, he's the prime cabinet something, secretary of some amorphous thing that doesn't exist. So he's speaking as the holder of a position that doesn't exist, to start with.
That's him. That audacity.
First, that's why he's looking for a way to protect what he holds, because it is not in the Constitution. And for him to come and speak that way, he's been sent by a government, again, that I said that does not. You know, at Kasarani, there are two things that were given to President William RUTO during the swearing in. There was the Constitution, which he has to protect, defend, and uphold, and the sword. Unfortunately, we see the sword being used more than we see the Constitution being used. That's why we have Musalia Mudavadi as the Prime Cabinet Secretary, a position that doesn't exist in law. And a matter moves to court, and now we have two sides providing lawyer. Why are you providing a lawyer using taxpayers' money to defend a position that doesn't exist? So now we are going into talks, and now they've realized these talks are important because they give us an opportunity to cover for the places where we have insulted the Constitution and done things in ways that are not constitutional. And so for me, I can tell you both parties need these talks. But beyond both parties, Kenyans need these talks more than everybody else. Because the primary agenda item that should be discussed beyond everything else is the cost of living. The ordinary mwananchi at some point gets to a place where they don't care who is president or who is deputy or who is in the opposition. At some point when you get home in the evening as a man, your wife is looking at you and wondering, umekuja na unga ugali? Are the children going to eat tonight? If we reduce the conversation to that, then we begin to discuss those things that matter. That dad has not come with a piece of meat for the last 1 month. Ananunua mutura huko inakatakatwa inakuja inawekwa kwa sukuma wiki. Because the cost of living has been, I have been seeing that. They go, unajua unanunua mutura ya 50, ni mrefu inakatakatwa na ni minced meat. Kikachanganywa kwa sukuma, the children eat, they sleep. So we need to get to the point where, out of all those talks, the most critical item that must be discussed, and if everything else fails, that must be addressed, is how to bring down the cost of living for Mwananchi.
If you were part of that committee, Fanyamambo, I mean, where the government side is saying, and you hear what Musalia Mudavadi is saying, that look here, we can't beat you, and then once we've beaten you now on the other side of the opposition, you come in and start telling us about your policies. And he's referring to the cost of living. He's telling them, wait, we have a plan around this area. Wait for 2027. If you get into government, then introduce that particular policy. But for us, we don't want to talk about that. If Musalia Mudavadi is articulating the voice of somebody within government, do you already read a stalemate into these conversations that begin today?
There'll be no stalemate. There'll be no stalemate because Obasanjo is here. There'll be no stalemate because Kunz is here. Sometimes politicians tend to think that Kenya is a village existing somewhere on its own. They forget that this is the biggest economy in East and Central Africa. And Kenya is a hub. If you look at the positioning of Kenya on the African map, Kenya ought to have been a hub as critical as Dubai. One of the United Nations bodies is headquartered here. The United Nations has, the US Embassy has got one of the biggest embassies they have in the region. And some of our neighboring countries here do not have a US Embassy. They come to get visas here. Kenya is critical to the world. And the world at some point will realize that if we have to get rid of a bad leader by making him get out of the talks for Kenya to continue surviving, they will. Do you know how long it would take to relocate a UN headquarters from here to another country if they ban this nation by their careless talks? This nation is bigger than them. Some of them are just villagers who grew up, got elected, they became this and became that, and they think they can now run the affairs of a nation that has been so critical to the world. They need to take their thinking, their small, limited thinking about this country away from the table.
Yes.
And start realizing that this country is critical to Nigeria. Just walk around Kilimani and see how many Nigerians are here and they are doing business. Walk around this country and see how many Americans are here. The British Army in all places in the world is training in Laikipia for very many years. Why are they here? Why do you think the British Army, you think they wouldn't have gone to Tanzania or Rwanda or Burundi or every other place? Kenya is a critical place for the whole world. And if there's a person who is thinking they are going to chest them just because their village elected them to become an MP somewhere here in Kikuyu or somewhere in Kiharu, Ndende, Nyoro, and is making noise and saying, I was elected, we are Kenya Kwanza. So you are thinking Kiharu and the people of Kiharu and how they elected for you is more critical than this nation. This nation holds a lot for very many people. The Catholic Church, for example, has invested so much in this country. Look at their schools, look at their colleges, look at their institutions. Look at an institution as big as the Aga Khan Foundation. Look at their schools, look at their hospitals, look at their media houses. And then you have a politician who, save for the votes that he got from people, there's nothing else is brought into this nation. In fact, politicians take from this nation. They take from this nation. They take taxes, they take security, they take money. What do they bring to the table? And they are making noise. And they are ruining businesses of people who've brought billions of shillings into this nation. So before those politicians speak, they need to first shut up and ask themselves, what do we bring to the table that is Kenya? Yes. And I can tell you, the bulk of them are only taking because they are elected. Some of them come very poor. And then the next thing, they are driving a V8. The next thing now, they are shouting at us on top of Land Rovers and Land Cruisers. And they are forgetting that there is a lot in this nation that is critical and important to even the East African region. Some Tanzanians have invested here, some Rwandans, some Burundians. And you are ruining the nation, and you as a politician have invested nothing. Most of their money, we see them lavish. We saw one buy wine for 420,000, a drink for the boyfriend. They only take from this nation. And then those people have got the capacity to stand up and say there will be no handshake, there will be no conversation, because they don't care if Kenya bans, as long as they can continue taking from this nation.
Yes.
It matters that we start listening to those people who bring into this economy.
Once we come back, there's a question that I'm going to put to you, Fanya Mambo. If indeed we're going to go into negotiations, and there's a critical area that has got the embedment of the office of the Prime Cabinet CS in the Constitution, do you think Musalia Mudavadi is afraid that indeed if the Azimio coalition sits on that table and is a man who left their coalition and joined the government, is that why Musalia Mudavadi is speaking? That's why Branham White called his story Conversation Jitters. Once we come back, is Musalia Mudavadi scared? The story we're telling today is a story of passion in practice that grows into business.
We have partnered with the Youth Fund, talk to as many youth as possible and work with them, hold their hand.
It is an expose of captains who have decided to take on challenges in different sectors and industries within the country.
My mentors had also not started as CEOs. They grew up and they showed me how they grew in the organizations. So that's what motivated me to actually do international business. And it was a good experience.
As an individual, support in bridging the care gap, part of me also to offer a solution. I want to leave this world a better place than I found it.
This is the Captain's Arena. My name is Simba Kiage.
How do women do it? Will the real superheroes please stand up? Welcome to the best show on all things women.
You can.
Now we have to tell you, on our show, we're not just talk. We're mothers, wives, working women, your hosts, and the list goes on.
We also know how to relax and have some fun. It's living the life.
Yes, it is.
Realize your home ownership dream by investing in Brookvale Tuala by Safaricom Investment Cooperative, a magnificent prime residential property located in Ongata Rongai. Brookvale Tuala overlooks the majestic Ngong Hills and lies only 17 kilometers from Nairobi CBD. The project boasts of well-serviced plots with a perimeter wall, graded roads and a borehole. 50 by 100 plots are going for 1.4 million shillings with a flexible payment plan of up to 6 months. To book your plot, call 0729 121212 today. Safaricom Investment Cooperative, the investment partner of choice.
That's it. All right, so let's talk about this. And the question that we were going to ask Fanyamambo just before we went on break was essentially whether Musalia Mudavadi is scared. No wonder Brian Amwai then called his story Dialogue Jitters. Are we speaking now? Because we do not know the eventuality of that particular conversation, especially when there is the embedment of the Prime CS office in the Constitution. Fanyamambo, why is Musalia Mudavadi all of a sudden speaking?
To start with, again, I said I don't praise politicians.
Yes.
But I think God was fair and magnanimous. He looked at what would have been the Kenya Kwanza administration without the person of Musalia Mudavadi. And God felt that it was only fair for him to move him to that side so that we have a right-speaking, sober-speaking man. To be honest,
yes,
you must give credit where it is due. Musalia Mudavadi has in the last 1 year not said words that you would call divisive for this nation. In most of the occasions, he has been very measured in his words and very measured in his demeanor. And everything he has said, you can tell there's reason behind it. A lot of deep-seated reasoning behind it. And that, for that reason, I think we thank God for putting him on that side of the campaign, because I wouldn't imagine this administration without the two, Musalia Mudavadi and Kindiki Kithure. Then I think Kenya would have been in a very difficult and precarious position. So we thank God that he's on that side. As to whether we should enshrine the position of Prime Cabinet Secretary, my thinking is that I wish the Constitution would allow for a swap so that he becomes the actual Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, and then probably the very divisive Deputy President who tells us of shareholders becomes maybe a Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Yes.
Or maybe a chief government spokesman and makes a lot of noise about those things that he likes telling us, which are very divisive, by the way. Because when you start dividing Kenya into shares and continue repeating that mistake over and over and thinking it is a good thing, then it is bad.
Yes.
So as to whether we should enshrine the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, if it is a need for Kenya, yes. Reason,
yes.
Sometimes we tend to think of the person to occupy it and forget posterity. If we look at our Constitution and look at how we govern this nation, and feel that there is a need, which I think there is.
Is it there?
I'll tell you why.
Is it there, Fanyamambo? When you look at the duties of the Vice President currently and the duties of the Prime CS, It looks as if those two gentlemen are fighting.
I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Unlike Tanzania that has got 102 tribes that gel as one and feel they are one nation united by Kiswahili. And in Tanzania, you can become president even if you come from a very small tribe. In fact, most of the presidents who've come in Tanzania have been presidents who have come from some of the smallest tribes out of the 102 tribes in Tanzania. In this country, unfortunately, even as you go into campaigns, there's always need, because we were divided into tribal thinking a very long time ago. There's always need to make you feel like the team that is campaigning represents the face of Kenya. You know, there's a time they used to say that we used to have a Ferrari government where you have the president and the deputy president, there are no back seats. So it's just two people riding in a Ferrari. And you feel like there's a need to make, you know, like 2007, ODM had this thing they called a Pentagon. Or 5. It made it look like 5 of the biggest regions in the country would have been represented in that government if they would so have formed it.
Yes.
So there is need to create an office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, not because of the resources you're going to spend of it, but because of the aesthetics of trying to show that it's not just 2 people at the top. Maybe you have 3, because the Prime Cabinet Secretary also comes with a deputy.
Does it?
So you kind of have a representation that is wider, because we are tribal in our thinking. Though, moving into the next 10 years, what we need to do is to start speaking to the generations beneath us, to stop looking at this nation from the point of I am Kikuyu or Kikusi or Luya or Masai, and start looking about this nation from the point of meritocracy. If somebody can deliver, and they come from the smallest tribe in this nation, that tribe that has got 200,000 people, let us make that person president.
If that is going to be the conversation, then the next question that we should ask ourselves is, if indeed we do agree to create this particular office, and you have a government that has the president and the vice president, is that not what is not making Musalia Mudavadi then say, maybe now the conversation for this embedment should be, if you're running the government, then the prime seers should not be an appointee of the government. Is that why he's scared then?
Okay, whatever conversations we'll have, one of the other problems we've had in this nation is this. Sometimes you become president, but the question becomes, what other leadership role have you held in this country that prepares you for it? President William Samoei Ruto was lucky to have been DP for 10 years. You can look at the DP who was nobody before 2013. Then he becomes MP for 5 years.
Yes.
And then deputy president, and then maybe suddenly president. I think having some of these positions is good. When you look at somebody like Musalia Mudavadi, for example, he's been a minister for finance, he's been minister for this, he's been the longer a person has got an opportunity to sit in positions of leadership in different capacities in this nation, as they grow through their political ladder, the better for the nation. Because then that person is better equipped to understand how systems work at different levels. It is good, like for example, and I keep saying, I wish this nation had a ceiling age at which you can be elected MCA. I wish they did, and said past 40 or past 45, we will not. So that this becomes an incubation for leadership. And people after MCA, you know, probably after 45. I know people will argue and fight me with that, but I think if we had that ceiling, it would create an opportunity. You know, MCA, like there's one who has been MCA since 1997. It's not a bad thing, I'm not fighting him, but you kind of feel there's need to grow. And when you become an MP, they start saying, no, maximum, say 3 terms, for example, maximum. So that this person also grows and leadership is like that. But now we have a situation where even if you're 70, you can vie for MCA. So it becomes a retirement package or a retirement home or a home for the aged. So that shouldn't happen. So creating this position should be looked at holistically. What does it portend for the nation if you remove Musalia Mudavadi in future? Because what if Azimio won the next election, for example, and now it's the other people giving them pressure? You know, if there are some few positions to be shared here and there, sometimes people kind of keep quiet. So I think we need to look at it holistically as a nation. What would it benefit as a nation to have it? And I do not have the answer right now.
Pretty much. So let's continue with this conversation. There is a man who's already weighing in this particular talks, and that is Kithure Kindiki. He spoke yesterday, and this is what he said. Interior CS Prof. Kithure Kindiki has given a warning to the Azimio coalition over a possible return to the streets if the dialogue between the two political formations will not materialize. Kindiki further stated that the law enforcers are going to protect private and public property, noting that no politician will be allowed to instill fear to innocent people just because they want to achieve political objectives. Rugai Val covered that particular story. Let's look at it and come talk about it.
The Cabinet Secretary for Interior Security, Professor Kithure Kindiki, has stressed that the opposition wing should be willing to accept the outcome of the negotiations that will be held as from tomorrow between them and the government. Professor Kindiki has said that the violent demonstrations have been prohibited in case the Azimio coalition will not be satisfied.
We must remove violence from the equation of the politics of our country. Na hiyo iende kila mahali. Wakati watu wanapanga siasa yao, wakuwe wabunge, wakuwe MCA, wakuwe governor, wakuwe senator, wakuwe rais, mtu apange kuuza sera na asiporidhika na matokeo afuate sheria na afuate taasisi utaratibu ambao uko katika katiba wa kulalamika.
Kindiki has complained how Kenyans are instilled with fear during protesting days where lives and property are lost.
The government has decided that it will not allow again the destruction of the property of the people of Kenya. It will not allow citizens, whatever their grievances, to stone policemen who are on duty, to burn police vehicles, and to attack government facilities.
The CS defended the leadership system of President William RUTO, comparing it with that of the late Mwai Kibaki, raising the concept of Kenya being independent for its own expenditure, as he championed the need to reduce loans from abroad.
Mimi niko na hakika ya kwamba katika utawala huu wa Mheshimiwa William RUTO na msaidizi wake Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua, nchi yetu itapata kupata rasilimali za kutosha za kuendesha nchi yetu, na mambo ya kukopa madeni mengi ambayo yataumiza vizazi vijavyo, hiyo mambo itasimama.
Additionally, Professor Kithure Kindiki is afraid of drugs addiction increase among young people from the Mount Kenya region, saying that
it will not tolerate us going back to the streets again. That in any way these talks end is telling the Azimio coalition, no, we're going to go back. Fanya mambo. I mean, I know you say that Kithure Kindiki is among those sane guys in this government.
I think this is very easy.
Yeah.
Professor Kithure Kindiki is doing his job. His job is to push the police to beat up those people who are seen to be causing mayhem in this nation.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, his job is to praise them for a job well done. Unfortunately, sometimes he praises them after they have already killed people.
Yes.
But I think he's just doing his job. Maybe the other thing he should have done is to speak to his IG of police and tell the IG of police to be also measured, because beyond being policemen, we are human beings.
Yes.
And there are words he said that were very unfortunate when he said that there were people who were hiring bodies to use them for display. And I remember I was on another different TV station that day having an interview where Honorable Kaluma walked out. And one of the things we did was to say, if honestly there is a mortician, if honestly there's a family that allowed their body to be used in that way, charges must be opened and pressed against such people. We are yet to see a file of that kind opened, and we are yet to see charges of that kind opened.
Yes.
But I think it's incumbent upon the IG to wake up and realize that that particular pronouncement was very, very hurting to the families, and to make amends and to actually make an apology and say, maybe it was not well intentioned.
Yes.
Because when you make such a statement and is not followed up by any substantive action, then people are left to believe that you're insensitive, because you've seen how many people have been buried over the weekend by the azimio. I mean, these were real lives, real people, real bodies, real homes, real families, real mothers and women and children having lost their breadwinners. So I strongly believe and feel that Professor Kithure Kindiki should also bring his house in order, which is now the entire police force.
Yes.
And try to remind them that it's no longer a force, it's a service.
Yes.
And that beyond everything else, every other person's lives matters.
Question has to be, yes, he's doing his job, but you see, this particular one is hinged on the outcome of these talks. I keep on asking you this question. All of a sudden again, you would like to think that the stage is now set. It's much clearer than it was in the first round of negotiations. Fanya mambo. We have a mediator, the two sides agree on the committee representation, but now more than ever, the Kenya Kwanza side is speaking heavily on these talks.
I think you don't get it.
Yes.
If Kindiki had his way, he would make those statements within Mount Kenya. Because that's politics. He keeps reminding the people of Mount Kenya that the person you fear is not coming into government.
Yes.
The person you say is destroying your property because they believe it's Raila Amolo Odinga who is spoiling their property is not coming. They have to keep reminding, and then the government has to keep showing that they've not conceded. They have not lost. They have to keep showing that the reason there's no maandamano is because the government said there will be no maandamano. We all know that may not be true. They have to keep saying that they have prevailed upon the opposition, they have won, they have beaten them into submission, the opposition is incapable of starting another maandamano. They have to show that the reason why we are having talks is because they have defeated the opposition. The opposition, on the other hand, has to show that the reason we are having talks is because tulikimbizana kimbi tukaweza serikal. So they have to show that. And as a mediator, let me tell you, because sometimes I mediate family disputes.
Yes.
A husband will not come and tell you, I am here because I'm afraid of losing my wife. They'll tell you, this one, they have to submit, they have to listen, they have to... And the wife will tell you, oh, huyu mwanaume. But when you take them into caucus differently,
yes,
the man will tell you, now you know if I lose my wife and my children are young, what am I going to do? He is thoroughly remorseful, and he knows where his mistakes are.
Yes.
The wife, on the other hand, is not easy to lose the husband and her home and her house because it's taken her 10 years to build. And he's not going to let this home go just like that. But she has to play hard and difficult and to show the man that she can live a kona kwao and she's beautiful and she can be married again. This is the power play that is going on. And in every talks, in every mediation, you have to realize that nobody comes to show their vulnerability. Government will never show its vulnerability. And the opposition will never show their vulnerability. But once you go into caucus and you're having separate talks with each of them, then they will tell you, we fanya hivi. Kama watakubali hii na sisi tutawapea hii, enda usukume hiyo. That's what they're telling Obasanjo. And these ones are also telling Kun, we fanya hivi, sisi tuko hapa.
Yes.
We want this. We don't really care about this. Go and talk to them. That's how mediations happen. So when they meet, you have to expose your hardline positions. Otherwise you're going to lose your supporters. Even Raila Amolo Odinga, he has to keep showing that he's got the strength. Otherwise he's going to lose his supporters. So that is politics. But I told you, when we go into bombers, politics will be out and leadership will come in.
At what point does this talk make the negotiations difficult? As a mediator, at what point do you tell any other person who's looking from outside, shut up, because you're making this process a bit difficult?
Can I tell you this?
Yes.
Careless talk will continue. Completely and totally, it will continue. But meaningful conversations will be held at Bomas. That I can tell you. This government knows they are losing 3 billion shillings a day when there is Mandemano. And they know they are losing life. And they know they are losing reputation and credibility. And they know the United Nations is not happy when dignitaries cannot leave the airport and go to the United Nations headquarters. They know that. And the opposition, on the other hand, knows that it is not happy about the fact that most of its supporters are being shot down and killed. All of them have got something they have lost. But those unto whom much is given, much is expected. The government has lost more. and is feeling it more. Because even the eyes of the international, for Chris Coons to leave the United States, you think he would live there without the United States government knowing? You think Obasanjo would leave his country and come here because he's idle and he's retired and he's got nothing else to do? The African Union is involved. So this nation, I have always told people, you as a politician, you're just a villager who was elected by your village mates to become an MP or a senator. They like you because you are one of them. And by then, if you died, they will replace you anyway. But this nation is bigger than the thinking of your villagers who think you are a hero by making you an MP or a senator or whatever it is that makes you very proud. And if we replaced you, this nation would go on. Wonderful people have passed on. The founding father of this nation, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, may he rest, he'd passed on. But Kenya moved. So let no politician think that they are indispensable and they are so important and critical to these talks. This nation is critical for its people, for its children, and for the children's children, and it is also critical for the people who relate with us. The East African region and the international community. So let nobody come and bang their small chest because some villagers elected them to be MP. No, 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 no. That is not enough. They need to know that there are people who have brought much into this nation and they expect much from this nation.
Yes.
Yeah, and so this nation is not going to come down because of the careless talk of somebody who was elected by people who think like him. And I have always said, you see, people think elections confer wisdom upon people. So that if you were the village fool and people make you MCA, automatically you've become wise. In as much as they left maybe a professor or a doctor to make you MCA or MP or governor. You know, sometimes, one time Nairobi made a mistake. There was Peter Kenneth and then there was this other person that they voted for. And they thought that by putting so many votes, 1 million votes on this other person that they voted for, they have made him wise. History would prove them wrong. That if 2,000 of you come and say that a rat is a rabbit, and one person says a rat is a rat, you tend to think that that person was wrong. And that's what elections do in this country. It's about people queuing, and then you know they've been put for two rabbits. One is male, one is female. They are given the male one. All of them vote and say that the male one is female. And then the 2 or 10 or 15 who are sensible say, no, this rabbit for sure is a male rabbit. And what happens? It goes there. So you have a person who occupies a position of leadership, but he's not a leader. He was a village goon, he's a goon, he's a goon, he's a goon, he's a goon. And then this nation needs to understand that elections does not confer wisdom or genius on a person who was not qualified to have been elected anyway. So you come and say, tutaki wamesoma na madigiri zao na maprofessors. It's okay, it's fine. You elect a villager who thinks like you. He becomes a villager who thinks like you, but he's senator. Or a villager who thinks like you, but he's governor. Or a villager who thinks like you, but he's MCA, or he's whatever. And that villager will bring his village mentality into a space that required leadership and understanding. And that because he can't provide that, what does he do? He just goes insulting everybody. He goes insulting everybody because that makes him relevant. And fighting every other fight that he shouldn't have been fighting. This nation has got, for example, leaders who are always fighting everything around them as opposed to bringing new ideas. I was praying that one day the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya would wake up and come up with a new idea from their manifesto, something they want to do for the nation. The only thing we hear is how Raila is bad, how Uhuru is bad, how shareholders have done, how nimeweka mitego kila mahali kwa State House, kila mlango anaweza ingilia nimeweka mitego. When will this nation grow? If the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya is not bringing new ideas for development, kazi yake ni kuweka mitego. Now he's become a mitego master. He keeps saying, nimeweka mtego. Ati nilienda ngambo kidogo nikasikia wako karibu kukimbia, nikakimbia mbio, nikarudi, nimeweka mitego, nimeweka mitego. That is as far as this nation has gone.
Yes.
That the people who should have been providing leadership now, wanaweka mitego kila mahali. Yeah.
Pretty much. Now, even as we talk about the talks that are outside these talks, the clergy in the country is already weighing in on this particular issue. Now, this is what they're saying. The clergy from the Seventh-day Adventists are now calling on the leaders from both Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja coalitions to avoid chest thumping and issuing polarizing statements ahead of the planned bipartisan talks between the two sides. The religious leaders indicated that the government should agree to the talks in good faith, while noting that engaging in talks with the opposition is not a sign of weakness on the government side, but rather a show of strength and leadership. Let's lock in on those statements, then come back and talk about it, because Fanya Mambo is saying that this particular talk, around these talks aside here, they will continue. But then he's saying within, there's going to be sensible conversations. The church does not share that particular statement. Let's look at it.
Government and opposition coalition Azimio la Umoja expected to officially kick off on Monday, with both sides yet to agree fully on the issues of concern.
We have held a very successful meeting this morning, and as indicated, we have agreed that we will begin the dialogue process once we frame the agenda items, and I think we should be ready with that by Monday. As both sides settle for the talks, priests from Sabbath Church Nakuru West Parish have called on the two parties to resolve their issues amicably. Speaking to the media in Nakuru, Pastor Zachary Amenya noting the importance of both sides speaking in one voice.
My advice to the government, together with all the politicians, is that let this team that has been chosen to handle the issue, let that team be left to be independent, because in this country we need peace.
In addition, the clergy noted that leaders must show willingness to listen to the needs of Kenyans, and both the government and opposition wing should work together to provide a permanent solution to the problems affecting millions of Kenyans.
Let's allow the bipartisan team to do its work. Let us not have politicians agree on something and then while outside there they continue to add more wood into the fire.
The clerics also called on politicians to find alternative ways to resolve political disputes that will not hold the country hostage or lead to violence and destruction of property.
Kiingisha siasa katika mambo hayo ni kukosanisha. Sasa kwa sababu wanakuja kama makabila, ukiangalia kama hapa kanisani tuko makabila yote. Wakileta mambo kama hayo, hatutaendelea, tunarudisha nchi yetu nyuma.
Nushin Mungasia, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
That's what they're saying. That stop talking completely. The church is saying completely desist. Let that particular committee that has been selected continue with their work. So the rest of us, just shut up. Give them time. Because whatever it is that you're talking about across the country, about those particular talks, are going to make those conversations difficult. They don't agree with you.
To start with, I want to commend the SDA church, because the bulk of those were SDA leaders. In their church gatherings on Saturdays, they do not allow their pulpits to be insulted by politicians. But we have a church in this country that I don't want to mention, that usually has got very many bishops and pastors seated behind politicians. And this church is predominantly found in my region, Mount Kenya. And that church has allowed itself to become an arena of very divisive politics. I remember one time the deputy president speaking in a church with bishops behind him. Yeah. And he was saying that he cannot shake Raila Odinga's hand because if he shook him, he would remove what he wears under the trousers and put it on the head. It's on record. And the bishops were clapping and cheering. And he would ask the congregation, sasa hata unashindwa watu walienda kanisa kufanya nini? Because you're in a church where one of the biggest teachings should be peace and love and forgiving your neighbor and living in harmony and understanding each other. And you claim to be saved and you are being told, nisalimie huyo mtu, and you are saying no, and then you are clapping and you are in church. What is wrong with your head? By the time you are saying that you shouldn't have a handshake and the Bible is telling you love your enemies and you are there preaching every other Sunday, in fact, they should stop going to church, those Christians, because they are not Christians. Christianity is about forgiving your enemy 70 times, 7 times. I am not a preacher, but I know. And I can tell you, I don't go professing that I am saved, and I don't go preaching to people. I don't wear a kilemba, and I'm not a bishop. But in my layman's CRE as standard 7, I know that it is wrong for people to speak divisively in an altar, and it is wrong for people who are receiving that to even clap and cheer at any divisive message. I think this should have been a golden opportunity for those bishops and their followers to say, wait a minute, we have a problem. And the problem we have is if we do not come together as a nation, if we do not look for those people who persecute us, if we do not look for those people we tend to hate, then this nation will be divided right through the middle. So I must say, and look at the camera and say, shame on you bishops, shame on you bishops, shame on you 100 times, all of you who have allowed, not everybody, those who have allowed politicians to stand at their altars and say divisive things, and then they have clapped and their congregation has clapped. Na kama wewe ulikuwa kwa hiyo kanisa na ulikuwa unapiga makofi, hata wewe shame on you, you're not saved, you should leave that church and go and look for something else to do. Probably you should be in a casino, because even if those words were said in a bar in a casino, the drunkards will tell you, ngoja, umse ni mzuri pia, si ni Mkenya. So if drunkards would think that way, why would the saved ones not think that way? I think this nation needs to start recalibrating itself. And people need to start understanding that you're not always right.
At what point are we going to separate the church from politics? Because we know the big man is a church man, and I will tell you, next Sunday you'll be in church as well. At what point are we going to say, well, maybe the church should not do this?
I'll tell you this. The Catholic Church has made it very clear. I don't hold brief for them. But they have made it very clear that they are not going to allow those things to be said in their altar. So it doesn't matter for what consideration, whether the people are giving you money or not, ama wamekuja na sadaka ama wajaleta. Let that not be the guiding factor. Let the church remain a church. And they forget one thing. Nairobi, for example, is very cosmopolitan. When you are speaking those things in a church, that's why those things only happen within Mount Kenya, by the way. You can't come and do that in Nairobi, because when you're speaking in a church, there are people in that church who did not vote for either of you. They felt, remember there are 8 million Kenyans who didn't vote. They felt Raila was not good and RUTO was not good. So they didn't wake up, they didn't care. They called it a holiday, they drank their beer and slept in the house. So don't come telling them divisive things. They are not interested in you. They would have gone to vote if they liked you. There's another about 7 million or close to who also did not vote for Kenya Kwanza. So when you're coming there to tell them how you're not going to do a handshake, those people are feeling disillusioned, and they're wondering why their bishop allowed you a platform to come and insult their faith and belief right before them. So the church must desist, and they need to meet all of them as bishops and castigate one another and say that most of these divisive things that are being said in church. And so those churches must stop to allow that platform from happening. Let politicians go and do that, I don't know where, but not in the church. If you want to tell people divisive things, spend money, mobilize them, call them to a veranda somewhere or a field, and then tell them those divisive things. But don't wait for the church to mobilize people who had come to manifest their faith and pray, because in fact now people are very full in churches because they are praying for Unga to come down, and then you are coming there to tell them that you want to discuss how you are going to divide the nation. Father, the reason those people are there is because they are so miserable. They are looking for miracles. They are there telling the bishop, pray for me so that I can go home with some Munga this evening. And then you are there telling them how you will not share government. And some of those people, hata hawajakula breakfast, they were yawning seriously. So these people need to be sensitive to Kenyans. And wajue pia wa Kenya sahi hakuna jam. Wengi wanaacha magari nyumbani. Even those who have cars. There's no traffic even when I came this morning. It's not because schools are closed. It's because many people are leaving their cars at home, and because they can't afford this fuel. And then when you come to stand and you have an opportunity to speak, instead of speaking the things that are close to their hearts, you are telling them how you will not share government. Who cares whether you share government or not? Bring the cost of living down. In fact, right now, if you ask Kenyans, they will tell you, we don't care if Mudavadi or RUTO or whoever is president. What we care about is being able to go home and provide for our families, is being able to pay fees. Right now, university education has already tripled. So now it will become the preserve of the rich. Ama mtaanza tena kufanya harambe mpeleke watoto university. And then you're telling us how you're not going to share government. We don't care if you share government. All we care is my daughter ameitwa MKU, ama ameitwa Desta, ama ameitwa kwingine, and I can't take them to school. That's what Kenyans want to hear right now. So at the heart of these conversations should be, and if any politicians is going to stand in any church, they should be telling us how they are going to make university education affordable, fuel affordable, food affordable, and the things that matter to every other Kenyan. Hii kelele ingine kama mtashare serikali, you can all stay at home anyway. We don't care if you're in government, by the way. Sio lazima mkue kwa serikali. We can have one president and the 47 senators, 290 MPs. We don't even need them. It's just that they are constitutional. So Kenyans right now only care what matters to them. Start telling them what matters to them, not what matters to you as a politician.
Pretty much. Now, on that particular note, well, we did have the office of the president in a church this weekend. Because according to the president, William Ruto, the over-reliance on borrowing has been brought about by lack of proper saving structures in the country. Now, the head of our state, while lamenting at the lack of savings from millions of Kenyans, has vowed to ensure the doubling of the amount of money saved under the NSSF from the current 350 billion to 700 billion by the end of his first term. Rigathi Gachagua was also in charge with the president. He also had a share of what he thinks about the country. So let's take then a look at probably the kind of conversation we should be having in church, according to Fanya Mambo. Let's take a look at that particular story.
With opposition leaders calling out the government over its decision to rely on taxes to fund projects, President William Ruto has reiterated his stance on borrowing, insisting that his administration will continue to champion for savings, noting at his plans to double the amount of savings in the next 4 years.
We were not in good space in terms of building our savings. In fact, they told me, which is true, our savings as a percentage of GDP is below 10%. Savings in other jurisdictions is 25, 30, 40. In fact, in China, it is 55% of GDP. So they told me we have to change this because part of the challenge we have of borrowing is because we do not have savings. That the money we saved in NSSF, and Raymond would know, is about 350 billion shillings in the last 60 years. We are going to double that money, the 350 billion. We are going to double that money in 4 short years.
Speaking at Faith Evangelistic Ministries in Karen, Nairobi, the head of state continued to advocate for the affordable housing project, noting that the main aim of the project was to create employment for the youth.
Many people were wondering. I have many questions. Why are you pushing this housing agenda? What is these houses? Who told you we need a house? We all have houses. What is this? Good people, I have said it before, I will say it again in church. It wasn't so much about the houses. It was so much about the jobs for the young people of Kenya. We have never had a comprehensive program, deliberate, intentional, to create opportunities for the young people of Kenya to have a job, to have an income.
Elsewhere, while attending the 41st graduation ceremony at Baraton University in Nandi County, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has continued to defend the new university funding model, insisting that it is meant to ensure equality among all students.
Nimeona sasa wakijaribu kusema ati the changes we have made in the education sector is making education for the rich. It's a lie, blatant lie. What we are saying is we are changing the model so that people, once you are given assistance, is full. Hakuna haja kusomesha mtoto mpatie bursary form 1, umwachilie form 2, hana then arudi nyumbani umeenda hasara. We have just refocused and changed the strategy of funding university education because there are many challenges.
Ian Keitani, Lookuptv.
All right, are we back? Yes, we are. Good. So if you're in charge, is that the kind of address you'd like to hear from the president if you're essentially in charge? Because again, I will tell you again, next Sunday we'll be in church somewhere as well, talking about the state of the country. This time around, he completely avoided to touch on the negotiations. that are currently ongoing in the country went directly into his government agenda, essentially going into savings. We do know that there's a new deal for NSSF that is essentially bound to unlock close to 48 billion, and went and talked about the affordable housing projects. That's it.
I think first I must commend the president for the first time in a long time.
Yes.
Because his conversation did not border on those very divisive things within the nation.
Yes.
But I must say that his advisors need to pull up their socks, because they should have told him, Your Excellency, you are the president. And you do not need to sometimes keep showing the need to get validation by explaining why you are doing the housing project. I think if I was the head of state and I appeared in that church, I would have said something to the line of, we are one country. And whether we agree with the people in opposition or in any other place,
yes,
we are one country. President Moi, in his wisdom or lack thereof, alikuwa anasema mugae kwa amani. He kept repeating that. Na hapana umiza jirani yako, mugae kwa amani. I think President William Ruto right now needs to be speaking conciliatory languages, telling people like, hata hiyo mazungumzo inaendelea Bomas, we will do our best to bring the nation together. Because when you go to a church like the one he went to, it's within Langata constituency in Karen, where it's a very cosmopolitan area. You want to say words that are not so much about your administration, but so much about the nation. Kenya, the nation. And what matters to every other Kenyan is that they want to hear that there will be peace, there will be understanding, there will be reaching out, there will be happiness. It will be plenty within our borders. So I think explaining government agenda within church may not be very good. I remember there's one time I went to Don Bosco Upper Hill Church, and President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta was there, and he was invited to speak. He spoke for only 2 minutes. He said, I came to pray, and this is a place of worship. And I am happy that I've been given an opportunity to speak. I think the most important thing is for every Kenyan, wherever they are, to uphold peace, and to love their neighbor, and to remember to take care of their children, and to speak good things every other day when we meet. Those are the kind of things he said. He only took 2 minutes and sat down. And people were left thirsting for more. Every podium is different, and the conversation for every podium should be different. I think that's all I have to say.
I don't want to add.
Yeah, every conversation should be different for every podium.
That's it.
And I don't blame the president.
Yeah.
Again, it's the people surrounding him.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when you invite the president to church, aren't you inviting the presidency to church?
And that's why I said one of the critical things about the presidency is the unifying factor. He is the symbol of national unity. Mm-hmm. And in places of worship, if there's anything somebody should carry and leave everything else behind, is that symbolism of national unity. If I was president and I was called to any church, the only weapon I would carry is the symbolism of national unity. And the only language I would carry is the language of bringing the Turkana and the Mijikenda and the person who Wajir and the person who Kuchini Narok to feel that they are one nation under God and under the flag.
Guess what? Take him back to the time that he joined us this morning online at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms. And by the way, for all those comments that have come in through our Facebook Live, just what we do appreciate. And we're going to continue then engaging even after we are done with this particular show this morning. My name is Simba Kiage online at Lookuptv across all the social media platforms. Look for this guy, Fanya Mambo, all right? And then after that, you can essentially also get to engage him on a personal level as well. Good morning. This is how we call it quits this morning. Until tomorrow, good day.
Realize your home ownership dream by investing in Brookvale Tuala by Safaricom Investment Cooperative.